And for further analysis, we're joined from Cairo by Al Ahram managing editor Mohamed Ezz Eldin. Mr. Mohamed, pleasure to have you in this special coverage. And first off, in what ways might Iran's insistence on its enrichment rights influence future nuclear negotiations or trigger regional security escalations?
Thank you so much for having me on Qnews. Of course, uh, Iran's persistence to have the right to a nuclear program, saying that it's a peaceful or civil program, in addition to its right to enrich uranium, is a desire to not submit to the US conditions and terms. The US agreements that the US wants to strike as soon as possible is the only hope for the United States, and there are also aspiration on the Israeli side to fail these attempts in order to launch a military escalation, whether by the United States or with the help of Israel against nuclear facilities and especially the missile manufacturing facilities. The Iranian desire for the negotiations to be always related to the nuclear program and anyway beyond producing the nuclear bomb without talking about the missile programs or the broad range missiles is a desire to prolong the negotiations and also to impose its own conditions or what it sees as US conditions to lift the sanctions.
Mhm. Now, tackling the diplomatic perspective, what are the potential diplomatic consequences of Iran publicly asserting its right to enrich uranium while dismissing US concerns?
This Iranian will is to prove its stance, and it cannot be a challenge to the United States, and therefore it cannot be considered as an escalation that would actually trigger the United States to launch a military operation against the Iranian facilities. What Iran talking about is some kind of diplomacy during the talks regarding the U.S. conditions or demands, or they are setting barriers or terms to face the U.S. aspirations to dismantle the Iranian nuclear program. Iran does not want to repeat the Libyan experiment in 2003 to completely give up any potential for a nuclear program or a missile program. What Iran wants is to have a nuclear program to allegedly peaceful and also to have the right to enrich uranium with under some levels. This is for the United States and of course for Israel as well. They see it as an attempt to hide the real abilities of the Iranian nuclear program and that Iran might be at any point of time without a pressure will be able to produce a nuclear bomb which will change the entire equation.
Now, sir, regarding Trump's ousted security advisor Walt's alleged coordination with Netanyahu on an Iran strike, how might this reflect deeper divisions within the U.S. foreign policy circles regarding Iran?
Of course, that is now publicly known, changing the national security coordinator because he had similar views to Israel regarding launching a military strike and luring the US to this strike, and therefore escalating the situation in the Gulf region, which is something Israel itself is not prepared to, and therefore the United States president decided to give the job to his foreign minister Rubio. This uncovers the divisions inside the US administration to end the nuclear program of Iran. The United States wanted to have, does not want to have nuclear power inside the Middle East other than beyond Israel, and they also want to practice maximum pressure to reassure its allies in the Gulf region that they will not be exposed to any uh, sort of tensions in the event that there is a military strike will be directed to Iran. It's here regarding the priorities of the American foreign policy, and therefore the U.S. president, in spite of his statements that some might see as radical or tended to the right wing or threatening to other states' affairs, he does not want to get into a conflict that to uncalculated conflict, especially with a country that owns ballistic missiles. We have seen a ballistic missile being launched by the Houthi group today with a non-advanced technologies, and the failure of the Israeli air defense to intercept it as it hit the Ben Gurion uh, airport. This means that the party that provided support to the Houthi is Iran. They have advanced abilities, and getting into a military confrontation is will not be accepted and or allowed even for Israel to take over, even with the consultation with the United States, at least at the current
Yes, sir.
time.
Building on what you said, how could this unauthorized military coordination between U.S. officials and foreign governments affect trust within the U.S. national security establishment?
It is very complicated. The United States has always been a state of institutions, but the current U.S. administration is now going beyond the traditional foreign policy of the United States, even in terms of statements. There has been commitment before regarding the military operations or the foreign policy, but threatening publicly with forcing sanctions and the executive orders regarding military or trade wars or economic affairs makes the international community more agitated and more suspicious regarding and they have all their own suspicions regarding the U.S. intentions, especially in a region such as the Middle East, where the world power have interests, and the major powers in the region have alliances with different states from around the world economically, and this is in addition to threatening the energy security in the world. The allies, the international community, and the European Union must reconsider their policies and their moves and even their statements regarding the US foreign policy and coordinating with the different states, which have declined and it's now in its lowest point.
From Cairo, that was Al Ahram managing editor Mohamed Ezz Eldin. Thank you so much for joining us here on Q News and for all the information you provided us with.